Well, I mean, this is unusual, but I'm also pretty excited just to have a intimate, I guess, conversation with, yeah. And also, like, feel free, since we're like such a small, I guess, group of people, I mean, feel free to throw me like any questions, or like, you know, if you want me to elaborate on any slides more and stuff. Yeah, so basically I'm gonna sort of revisit some of the, I guess, the birth for this project, and also like how many iterations we have evolved over past 2 years. And so thank you all for being here, and thank you to Gladys and Los Angeles Art Book Fair for hosting us today. And I'm Scarlett. I'm the funder and creative director of Related Department and Page Bureau. And so this program is part of an ongoing series of events, talks, exhibitions, and workshops connected to our experimental publishing projects called Plates. So since I founded the studio in 2017, we've produced more than 30 publications so far, and some with established institutions and publishers, some with independent publishers or artists themselves, some by our own team. And so it was pretty much under the radar, like in the very beginning, and later became more official and interwoven with our creative identity. So the act of publishing becomes both a site of inquiry and a method, a way to explore how graphic design might operate as a critical and generative voice in its own right. So in independent publishing, we feel like we act like designers, artists, writers, and I guess performers, distributors, bookkeepers, and roles of many kinds. And as our roles have expanded beyond just being designers, our approach to design and our definition of authorship has transformed over the past years as well. So Jonathan Lethem in the book, The Ecstasy of Influence, argues that the conventional idea of originality is no longer valid. So Lethem argues that originality is less about creating something from nothing these days, but more about weaving together existing influences and references. So how can we be authors as graphic designers? Like, we constantly, I guess, ask ourselves that question, and also what does it really mean to cultivate an original voice within the field today in this like very postmodern condition. So Lethem says invention, it must be humbly admitted, does not consist in creating out of void but out of chaos. And so for us, design isn't defined by a fixed outcome. It's an ongoing iterative process of being and becoming, and it's less about reaching a final form to deliver, and more about engaging with constant change, rethinking, revisiting, revising, and responding to new contexts. So in this sense, design becomes a living practice that could be more open-ended and amorphous. And or if we think about publications like this one called The Dossier on the Site of a Shooting by Goss PDF, it's a murder case published as a zip folder with a collection of digital files. And it turns publishing into a kind of performance where how you read or interact with it changes the narrative, visual hierarchy, and power relationships between different content. And so Plates was born in this ethos and was originally launched at New York Art Book Fair 2 years ago. So when we received a Shannon Michael King Award with some grant money, I immediately thought it's the right time to do a project on collective authorship in graphic design. So to further the spirit of collective voices, I decided to invite a guest art director to design with us for every issue. I invited Gabriel Melcher to join us as guest art director for the first issue. And Gabe is a friend based in New York who's also a design director at Something Special Studios. So for our past projects at Related Department, we usually work as a small team internally, but I was curious to see how bringing someone else into the process might change the design method, how their perspective, working rhythm, and visual language could challenge our way of working and push the project in unexpected directions, and vice versa. So why Plates, why this name? And some people like always ask us these questions. And this word plates can mean many different things to us depending on the context. It can refer to visual or textual plates in old books, a term that come from printmaking and publishing. It can also describe tectonic plates, which are geological and enormous in scale. And then, of course, there are the everyday plates we eat from, small and familiar. So the word moves between different worlds, from the visual and textual to the geological to the domestic. So in summary, plates is an editorial and a curatorial response to contemporary design, practice, and criticism. Each issue dives into a specific topic that is pertinent to the design reality we live in, presented and archived in a series of image and textual plates in an organic, iterative, and evolving format. And so plates also explores how layout functions as a narrative device for redefining authorship, visualizing hierarchies, and shaping power relations. So in the first issue, manifesto versus manifest, we want to ask this question, be like, as designers, why do we need so many manifestos? And how can we manifest ourselves alternatively? And so in this issue, plates manifest only a version of each contributor or their practice, with amazing lineup of participants like Jack Self, Sokin Ming, Drawdown Books, Dynamo Typefaces, etc. And when we send out the invitation, we have encouraged them to submit any kinds of medium for their manifestos as an alternative format to a traditional kind of manifestos. And so they could contribute a word, a sentence, a short fiction, an audio file, a GIF, a video, a typeface, or anything. So Dynamo actually sent us a font meme, and Drawdown sent us an OTF file. So, and then Sokin Ming gave us this transcript for a lecture they give at China Academy of Art. It's called Manifesto for Manifestos. And John Preventures gave us his computer-generated graphics. And this is Ken's dissertation. And so traditionally, magazines are designed to show hierarchy. The bigger the image or the more prominent the placement, the more important or well-funded the content is assumed to be. And there's a building visual language of power and value that guides how readers move through the pages. So instead of using design to dictate importance, we're interested in creating a more open and fluid space where different voices can coexist and collide, where readers can discover connections on their own. So each plate is thoughtfully designed and curated to function as part of a cohesive whole in its original delivery. And it's designed to have also a varying size and to be loose bound with an elastic band. So this has become an ultimate sort of framework for our editorial decision. And so that all these plates can be disassembled, rearranged, or reassembled based on every reader's personal reading habits and preference for sequencing and display. So in this way, this publication resists a fixed form and instead becomes a collaborative space where meaning is continually reconfigured through different iterations. And say we were in a group exhibition called Around Publishing in 2 summers ago. And for this exhibition in this very beautiful historic building, that also has a domestic, a sort of vibe to it. And we also made a special plates for the exhibition. So besides our print installation, we made these actual plates with the full table of content of issue 1 printed on 3 plates. And with colophon and credit on the back, just like a regular publication. And two winters ago in 2024, we gave a lecture on the role of authorship and manifestos in graphic design at Museum of Contemporary Art Tokyo during Tokyo Art Book Fair. And so Satoko-san was our wonderful translator arranged by the museum for our lecture back then. So she approached me and talked about the potential to produce a Japanese version for issue 1 after the lecture. So together with Sonoka-san from Slogan Studio, they produced a beautiful Japanese guide for our first issue. And so this is how it looks. They use the same cover design, just print them in risograph in limited editions, and then they translated everything text-based into Japanese. So though the form may change, like different layouts, iterations, even languages, the essence of publishing to us remains the act of making something public, say creating a shared space, fostering discourse around a body of work, and generating public engagement through different programs and platforms. And soon after that, we launched our second issue, Plates, the body issue. And the body issue really starts from a physical human body, yet if it's placed in different contexts, the notion of body could collapse into a synonym to a surface, a machine, a system, or an automated assemblage. A body could lack transparency, concreteness, and authenticity while still claiming its very identity and functionality. So once the topic was more clear, I invited Ken, London-based designer and educator, who's also a wonderful contributor in Plates 1, to finalize the list of invited participants and design together in this issue in the spirit of amorphous design. So the idea of amorphous design really comes from amorphous architecture, which is a class of architecture that follows no rules of form, proportion, symmetry, architecture that seems to spring from nothing with arbitrary shapes and capricious flourishes. So Plates presents collective voices which address issues around a corporeal body, a virtual entity, body politic, identity, like body mechanics, performative body, anything like related, anything around body in relation to their practice. And this issue also starts with an editor's note I wrote, and this writing begins with a conclusion, like just to respond to our everyday reality, to deal with evolving tools and technologies, shifting aesthetic paradigms, complex social networks, etc. And so this second issue begins with presenting Studio Moniker's seminal interactive piece, Neuhaus World, to lead the readers into a constructed virtual world from found media. And then followed by their performance, red follows yellow, follows blue, follows red, that investigates into crowd behavior and audience participation through a set of instructions based on the color of the cape they wear. And so leads, which this like this crowd sort of behaviors also like leads to a graphic language that's constantly transforming formations and patterns. In a very like interesting way, I guess it reminds me of like a Super Bowl halftime like last year when with Kendrick Lamar's choreography. And in the center of this second issue is a double-sided poster for Clement Vala's series Surface Survey back in 2014, which reproduced the texture maps of 3D scanned objects into prints or sculptures. And the center, and this centerpiece also showcasing the ultimate dichotomy between objects and surfaces, between 3D and 2D, between like reality and presentation. There's also article by Mara Fraser submitted by SourceType on dance notations and originally published on SourceType website. And so like for us, I guess we approach information not as something immaterial, but as something like a material which adds more information to it every time we represent it through a different medium. So a text moving from manuscript to layout, from screen to print, does not simply preserve information. It produces new information, like the form reshapes the content, typography adds its meaning, and scales, alters emphasis, and sequencing creates narrative. So even the grain of paper or the compression of ink becomes part of the reading. And in this sense, design is not decoration applied after the fact. It's a very interpretive act. And editorial design operates like a second authorship, like where hierarchy, pacing, rhythm, spacing, and reproduction technologies all like participate in this process of meaning making. So these images of common imprint of readers physically holding their books are documented, cropped, and organized together, and then their digital images being converted into offset print must then negotiate resolution like color separation, bleed, paper stock, mechanical like limitation, and all these. So these printed objects records the history of its own production. And these are not outside of the information, they're also part of it. And Laura Coombs contributed a piece from the book Cyberfeminism Index she worked on for Mindy Su by highlighting entries with a keyword body throughout the book. And it's also when we were doing the editorial work for it, we also presented in a way as an homage to Cyberfeminism Index design with these informations entered like a data string. And Luna Maurer submitted this set of performative typeface, and then Bryson Lee's showed these very beautiful artwork that blends the natural world with the human figures. And Stephanie Specht produces a new set of work, which is a diptych of posters for this issue. And on the left, it's Tiger's incredible writing on Minecraft, originally published on Arena alongside his poster submission. And when we were editing and curating this issue, we also feel like we're dissecting and stitching together like a disparate visual, textual, and cultural and technological elements with surgical precision. We're also, in a way, I guess, forging coherence from fragmentation to producing new forms of being. And last fall, we also got to curate an exhibition called The Politics of Layout at Ulysses for this issue specifically. So all of these work are, again, sort of being represented in a different form and print production, and also displayed with very different kinds of emphasis. And to us, this exhibition becomes another iteration for this issue, a new layout in spatial context that invites a new physical embodied experience around the prints. And so during our lecture between me and Laura, we open up discussion around also Cyborg Manifesto by Donna Haraway, a Juicy Perica's copy, and all these sort of topics we were talking about during the Q&A session. And soon after that, we organized our New York book launch event at Bungee Space with a pop-up exhibition and a talk by Tiger, Ken, and I. So with Bungee, we took the opposite approach than Ulysses, and then we decided to take over the space with minor intervention here and there in the space with our work. And so we re-added the table of content of the publication and made it into textile prints, and then hang it above the coat hanging system at Bungee, where we think it's a very bodily section in the store. And so these are a couple more images at the Bungee space. And in this version, a Cyberfeminism Index is wrapped around a column in the space. And so for us, plates is a microcosm of our very cacophonous design reality and a living organism that constantly transforms itself. And at our launch event in Berlin at Common Print, it evolves into the form of a new form, I guess. And this is a poster announcing the event. The event is consisted of two parts, which is there's a workshop version hosted by Ken, and there's also a talk between Ken, me, and Sam Kim, who's also the owner of Common Print Space. And the workshop is titled "The Body as Printer," and which enables a gestural qualities of verbs related to publishing and editorial acts. And so in the workshop, people are able to work with a few existing editorial framework we designed and produce something on their own. So this was last November, and here's also some output from the process. And then last December, the Japanese edition of the second issue was born at Counter Books in Tokyo. And now we're onto preparing the third issue of Plates, Conditions of Migration. So Copyright Reserve is our new collaborator for this issue. Each issue, as I mentioned, we invited a new designers or design collective outside our team to work with us. And Copyright Reserve is an Indonesian design studio and an independent publishing house. And we were actually neighbors at New York Art Book Fair last year, and it was their first time participating in the fair. And so in this issue, like I'm gonna just show quickly a few artwork that we're gonna feature in this issue. This is like Frozen Island by Halim Lee, and then there's also like now these like really beautiful work on Earthland, and also like info and updates. They're working on these like very old car and how it can sort of like symbolize a lot of the sort of transformation like in Canada. And then there's also like some bats like work, and his illustrative graphic work is like thinking about how the idea of like mythological gods can be like migrated like meaningfully and culturally through different contexts. So like there are more content to be confirmed at the moment, and then we're planning to launch it this fall in New York. And we want to continue to see how this editorial collaboration can iterate through new content and context and connection. And so that's pretty much everything I have today, and we're at C9, the first floor, if you want to check out the copies, the physical copies of plates. And I also brought the second issue with me today, and thank you all for coming. I mean, this is supposed to be just super casual today. Yeah. Yeah. They're a design collective. They are also a publishing house, but I don't think they print things themselves. But yeah, they also work with like all kinds of printers, like professionally. Yeah. I think usually we start with like a process, I guess, thinking about the general theme. Like we will have something a little more loose in the very beginning, and then through that, I guess, concept, I think we will reach potential people like who might be interested in working with us on that topic. And then we got really lucky because in the past 3 issues, like when we reached out to them, they're all like, yes, we're happy to collaborate with you, like, you know, thinking about this. And then the difficult part is about figuring out whose work we want to feature in the publication, and also if we want to commission new work from people as well. So like, and that happens also in a very organic and a collaborative way. And then we always discuss how do we say with like this upcoming issue, like a migration, like what does it mean to migrate? Like, does it mean like a culturally, like a socially, or even just like a naturally? Like if we think about plants being migrated, because I think originally when we think about, when I was thinking about, I guess, this topic, I was very inspired by a lot of the plants that I witnessed, I guess, in East Asia and Southeast Asia, when there were like birds sort of like pooping on big trees, and then you will see like a little like plants just growing out of big trees. And then I've seen a big tree which is probably being like a decades old or even hundreds years of old, and then that has like all kinds of plants on it. And that just like makes me think about what does really mean to be foreign, and what does it really mean to be native in that sense, and guess like what gets migrated. And so we want people to approach it like from their very personal, like I guess, perspective, whether it's like from thinking about species like a human, animals, plants, or think about how culturally, like how a specific culture gets migrated to a different geographical location, and it completely sort of like changed its way of presenting itself. And then there's also like a really interesting project we reach out to feature, and then we're still in the process of confirming. It's by Forensic Architecture. Forensic Architect, they are thinking about like there's a one investigation. They're talking about a ship of of migrants, actually there was this tragedy that happened in the Greek Sea, and then they're trying to sort of investigate into a maritime jurisdiction, and then also thinking about what's the truth behind those things, and then there's these spatial methodologies behind unveiling these, I guess, trajectory of how the narrative gets unfolded, what's the truth behind this kind of events. I feel like there's many different perspectives thinking about how things, how the idea of migration or even things related to migrants, I guess, gets interpreted. So we're looking at people from very different backgrounds with a very different approach to this topic. And then with the last person that mentioned Sambat, he's just really interested in the idea of a God, or the same God that gets interpreted through different cultures as well. But sometimes even when they start with a very, I guess, a dense concept, they might get, these concepts might be unpacked through very a visual approach, or something that seems a more, I guess, accessible in a way to the audience. And then that's the part, I guess, we're also excited to see how everyone take their concept in different ways. Yeah, so I guess we're sort of in this process right now, and then it's a very long process, I have to say. It's a longer process than the previous two issues this time, because I think migration just gets, I like to see how people are kind of try their own ways to unpack it. Any other questions? Studio. It's called Copyright Reserved. Yes, their publishing practice, I think it's called extensive publishing. So they also have two identities, just like us. So when we met each other last year at New York Book Fair, we just literally hit off immediately, and then we're also neighbors. I feel like that's a charm of being in a book fair, a sort of a context these days. And I also keep wondering how did book fair organizers curate who gets to be next to whom, because I think there's so much interesting chemistry happening between neighbors and collaborators too here. Any other questions, or just anything? Yeah. issue. Yeah. We're also really interested in sort of the politics behind thinking about like what's being considered native and what's considered to be foreign. And I think part of like I think what you said earlier really touches me, like which project gets like presented or representing this kind of like a topics in a print space. And I think there is something, I guess, unplanned through the process too, because there are projects we want to highlight, or there are certain kinds of like researchers or designers we want to feature, but maybe they didn't get to submit their work in time, or they never responded to us, you know. And then so I think with each issue we always try to have a wide range of I guess voices and perspectives, but also like I personally feel like that's kind of ambitious in its own way, because then do people feel like we're out of focus sometimes, or do you think it's like too general like as a topic or something, like because we're also navigating through this kind of like editorial space, be like, oh, like what do we really want to do about this? I guess for us so far it's almost just like a very much like a laboratory, yeah, because like we really want to see like how I feel like a lot of these people, they never get presented next to each other before, and I wonder if how they feel, you know, about seeing their work next to another body of work who's like completely, seemingly unrelated to their own practice. Yeah, I think this project also was born out of definitely like in this very post-COVID, I guess, mindset, because I felt like we were in such a bubble, I guess, for a while, and then like a lot of places were closing borders and stuff, and I felt very disconnected from my peers. So I wonder what they were thinking about, even if we're just like generally addressing the same topic. And so and each issue, I think there is a sort of conceptual, I guess, correlation to each other. Like the first issue was manifesto versus manifest. I think it's essentially about our own identity. I want designers and design critics to think inward. It's like, why do we need so many manifestos to express ourselves, and how can we manifest ourselves like alternatively? That's how it was born, as a question, almost like as a, I guess, internal critique in a way. And then moving on to the second issue, body, it's like something we mobilize to create, like, and then a lot of the designers, they work actively, not just with their hand, they're like not with just their brain, but their hands, and then their tools, and then their physical body and the way they perform it. And like all those things like really fascinates me, because a lot of people's visual language sort of also gets highly shaped by the way they use their body. So we were trying to see how they like interpret that topic, like in that specific, I guess, angle. And then the third issue, we're moving on to migration, because I think we work in a very global context these days, and then I don't feel like, although I'm also like really intrigued by people who always work in the same cultural context as well, and what's their interpretation on the subject. So there is like a Singaporean like I guess design collective. They also responded to us, be like, oh, originally we wanted to turn down this offer, and then because we never left Singapore, and then we always work in Singapore, and then so like we don't think we can contribute meaningfully. But I don't think that's true. And then, but then they were like, oh, but we see our books gets like a distributed globally, and then like these book fairs almost like a seasonal, like a migration, like, you know, and all these things. And then they were like, oh, maybe we can find a way to trace how our publications like gets migrated, like, you know. And then I haven't received their final thing yet, but like that's something I'm interested in. And I'm also personally, I don't think, although like they mentioned they never left Singapore, but to me, like Singapore is such a multi-ethnic and multicultural society, and there's so much like external influences like in the country, like I guess itself as well. So like, yeah, I think there's just so many ways to approach these, and I like to see how like a designers, I guess, gradually, how do they engage with themselves? How do they engage with their outside environment and cultural context and all that? So I think there is this hidden, I guess, thread, like from issue to issue that we're trying to explore. And yeah, yeah, I guess that's what we've been sort of thinking. Yeah, thanks. We are actively working on that issue right now. We're at C9. Well, I have to say this is the smallest like lecture I've ever done, but I really enjoyed how everyone gets to speak a little bit. So like, I mean, if you guys want to just like say anything related or unrelated, yeah, please. Cyberfeminism index? Yeah. I think there's a better page for that. Here. Yeah. Yeah, I think for us, I think we just like send out this invite for the second issue, like you can address anything related to like a body. Yeah, so she decided just to took it literally, like, and which is kind of interesting too, because like there's a lot of entries mentioning body in cyberfeminism index. So she did almost like a data search, like in that book, and then just to search keyword body or bodies. And then that's just like everything she got. There is a whole booklet for this included in this publication. So yeah, I have it here if you're interested in flipping through later. Yeah, so and then yeah, we found that's also kind of interesting because that's also a new iteration of the seminal publication as well. And then like yeah, and that's basically I think it was in a way it's like a one-liner kind of like approach to it, but still like very interesting with the outcome of it. Yeah. Well, let me know if you guys have anything else, but also happy to wrap up a few minutes earlier. Yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming. Yeah, that was a great conversation. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. We also want to talk more on the political aspect of it, but like so far, I feel like everyone's submission somehow try to avoid it in a way. Yeah, I guess maybe it's there's so much in the news already, and yeah, and then like maybe people want to talk about it from their like a very personal or artistic perspective. And yeah. Well, no, no. Yeah, like, go ahead. Yeah, I think we try to just be a little more, I guess, organic with what we get. And like these, like for the previous two issues, like magically we have like at least around two pieces of long writings in both issue. And then so in the third issue, like so far we haven't got any writings yet. And we're like, oh, we need writings. And then we need writers because we want people to know designers can write as well. And that's part of a very important mission, I guess, for this project. And then, but then we also feel like we don't want to force people in terms of like what medium or way they want to express themselves. Maybe with this specific topic, they don't feel like writing. And then we also reached out to writers who ended up like giving us something else. And then so I guess even if I want to curate it in a very specific way, it's not always happening the way I want it to, but I think I kind of enjoy that surprises. I feel like it's not going to be the end of the world if there's no writing in this issue. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, such a good question. Like, I think in the first issue, we didn't know if people are gonna be, if we're gonna be able to like receive a lot of submissions. So it was more like invitation based, and then um, and also with the second issue and third issue are also like kind of mostly like that. But I think starting from fourth issue, we really want to begin the open call like really early, even if we only get maybe a few submissions, as long as it's like very pertinent work, and that's great. But I think because the first few issues, it was pretty heavily curated, like in terms of, I guess, participants, like between our team and the collaborator we invited. So we kind of really honor each other's decision making throughout the process. But I think maybe in the fourth issue, we can have like a early open call, and then maybe starting to think from there and what can we curate and stuff, like, and I think it'll be very different experience. And I'm also like trying to see like what would be a good topic for an open call to happen as well, because there is one topic I really want to do, and I think I'm gonna just maybe share the secret with everyone today, because I want to do a project like an issue featuring project cannot be done by just one designer, just one person. It needs to be done by multiple people altogether. Like, the more the merrier. Maybe people will submit project that's done by 100 people, like altogether or something. I feel like those can be fun to have an open call, because then there would definitely be projects that's being done like collectively and that we haven't sort of like encountered before. So I feel like that might be an interesting topic too, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So I think all these like a sort of like a concepts or topics, we're also interested in exploring it like in a very, I guess, designer perspective in a way. Yeah. But yeah. Hope that was fun. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I love the presentation, and I'm excited for the new issue.